let's talk about the new album.
Sick.
It's called The Weight of Being, and it was released at the end of July through Everlasting Speed Records. We spoke a little bit about how this album came together. It sounds like it was mostly done during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned you had 10 songs finished by February of 2020. Do you want to talk about how the rest of it came together?
Yeah, that was like that was like the bulk of that was like the harder part because it was easy and hard at the same time because like nobody knew what was going on. So it was like the middle of lockdown. We really started writing that bulk of it. And we couldn't get into our practice space, even though it was like 15 minutes away. So I would just kind of sit in my room and write riffs. And then I was able to show Eric, be like, hey, what do you think about this? And he'd be like, oh, that's sick. And I'm like, what do you think about this? That's sick too. And I just kind of built a bank up from there. And then like a couple months after like the bulk of lockdown, this is before our place burned down, we were able to get back in and start hammering all that stuff out. So it was just me and Eric, really. It was easy enough because we lived together, and that was like the funnest thing that we were doing was like, oh, let's go to the studio, let's write, let's practice, and eventually we were able to kind of bring it to everybody else, but that was the last bulk of that was like just me and Eric coming up with stuff and then showing these guys and seeing what they thought, and then finally after a few months, everybody else was able to join us, and we were just kind of ironing out the little details.
Mm-hmm.
When would you say the writing part of it was finished?
Ooh. Trevor, what do you think? 2022? Early?
Yeah.
Like, early?
The same year we went to go record it. I think we were finishing it up.
When did we record it? I can't even remember now. It feels so long ago.
Like September. No, it was like October, I think, 2022. October, November.
October, November? Yeah,
maybe.
That's all right. No, maybe not 2022. 2021. Because it's 2023 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sat on this for a while. Like after we had it done, we had to wait for artwork and everything like that, and then like wait for the label. Art took us like 6 months to finally like get done, just because of some miscommunications with like another artist. And then we recorded it, and we were just sitting on the recordings forever. Everlasting Spew had reached out to us, early on, like when we were still writing, actually, because like he would talk to Eric every once in a while and just see how he's going, see what's up with the band. And then finally, just like out of the blue, was like, hey, I want to make you guys like an offer. If you guys want to release it with me, I'd like to release the new album whenever it's done. I mean, he totally took a chance on us with that because like he hadn't even heard it yet, but I think he was pretty stoked on what we were doing before, and that we were like friends with Birdflesh, and we had to split together. And he said he was like he wanted to release more grindcore because I know they're mainly like a death metal label at the time. So that was how that kind of happened. But yeah, we had the stuff finished for a while. We were sitting on it done for like almost a year, I feel like.
Did it take this long to come out because of like vinyl and all that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, the vinyl we're still waiting on. I think it was just a matter of, it was like Everlasting Spew's release schedule versus when we were able to get them all the materials on time, I guess. Because, yeah, it took like a year to come out, I feel like. Year. And like after everything was done and mastered, we got that into them back in February of 2022, I think, if memory serves correct. Because I had... See, that was September 2021, maybe. I had to get rotator cuff surgery. So we recorded it before I had to get surgery because I couldn't play for a few months after that anyway. And then, yeah, I think it was just a matter of like, it was just logistics. It just got lost in the sauce. It was like waiting for everything else to get submitted to them. And then also whatever their release schedule was is why it took so long. And for us, it just felt like forever because we had already started writing like back in 2019. And like, yeah, I don't ever want to take this long to release anything ever again. It was crazy. I just want to write and get it over with.
No more global pandemics, please.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be nice.
How would you compare the music to what you've done previously?
Ooh.
I'd say it's more straight grind.
This one's a lot different too. I think lot of that came out with like I was used to having another guitar player to bounce ideas back and forth off of, and also it was like with Tom, I always like try to keep it pretty balanced. Like Tom would write a song, maybe I would have a little bit of input, or I would write a song, Tom would have a little input. And regardless, it was like always nice to have like another guitar player to bounce it off of. Not that Trevor's not great to bounce ideas off of. Trevor,
Yeah, what the fuck?
I love you.
Forget I played guitar before I played bass.
It's true. So, but like, I guess also like all the other records, we were fresh off of playing shows, all these things. So this time was like it was a lull. I think it sounds like there are parts where I think like I'm like, did we get a little slower? Did we? I don't know, but just because like we weren't actively playing shows and watching our friends' bands and stuff like that. But I think we had a lot. Like it was like the last two records that we put out were splits, so we didn't have like a whole chunk of change to like have to put up for. So that was like we had to like write like 20 something songs or whatever it was, and like not that we had to, like we didn't have a set number to write to, but we were like very aware that okay, we have a lot of songs that we can write now. I think it is like a next building block of what we were doing in the past. Like that first album we did, Visceral Infection, was a little bit more death metal-y, I'd say. And then like once the Bird Flesh split hit, then we were like, that was like when we were just like, let's grind. And then the Nerve Grind split, the one we did with like Nerve Grind and Invertebrate, I think that was like definitely like a step in this direction. And this is, it's like it's a very solid break from like the death metal sound. I mean, there's a lot of that death metal backbone there, but there's definitely like we had a lot more fun ideas like that we could try out and play with that we built off before, especially like like the first song on the album with like that really long bass break, like stuff like that is fun. Just being able to play with different ideas. I guess I don't know if any of that makes sense. Maybe I'm just rambling.
So you guys had a few guests on this album, including some people who've been on the podcast before. Do you want to say who jumped in to help you guys out?
Trevor, you want to take it?
Yeah, totally. So we had Ben and Sebastian from Noisem. Sebastian did a sweet little solo in there, and Ben did some vocals. I think Sebastian did some vocals as well.
No, Sebastian was just guitar solo.
Okay, so Sebastian was just guitar solo. We had Lex from Sunrot.
And we also had UK, and we had Ellis from Birdflesh on there as well. We wanted to get Ada on there, like to get all those guys on there because those are the homies. And I think Ada's just like didn't have like the setup and stuff, so he was like he just couldn't do it. And that was really cool because Ellis had asked me to do a solo on the most recent Birdflesh album that actually finally just came out, like not long before our album came out. So it was like fun to have like all the friends on it. Like Noisem, we had just done that tour before with them, like before we took a break, and that was in 2019. And those guys are really good friends of ours. Love those guys, and they live in Baltimore where we were recording because we were recording with Kevin Bernstein, and Ben actually lived like 5 minutes down the road from him in his studio. So we were hanging out with them when we saw them, and that like came out super natural. Like Birdflesh, I was like, oh yeah, we got to get them on here. And like that's like Ellis. I was like, how can I repay you for letting me do a solo on this? Because I don't even play leads that much, and Ellis was just like, you got to do it. So I definitely wanted to have them on there because he was like, I was like, how can I repay you? He's like, just get the Birdie Boys on the new album. I was like, hell yeah. And then Noisem was just natural because they were there hanging out, and Sebastian was like, hey, you want some dive bombs on the album? I was like, sure, that'd be sick. And then
I'll never say no.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then Lex is like a good friend of ours. Like, hey,
Scott are best buds.
He and Scott are like best buds, so that was very natural.
He and Scott,
yeah.
I'm actually not that familiar with Lex's band, Sunrot. What kind of music are they?
Oh, they're dope. They're like sludgy kind of experimental stuff. Lex, he does a lot of noise on there. He's got like a whole giant. They all have like a bunch of pedals and stuff. Kind of like, I don't know if I would say neurosis-y, but what would you say, Trevor? I don't know.
Pardon?
What would you say?
I didn't hear that last part.
How would you describe like Sunrot's music? I just said like really sludgy, kind of like experimental with some noise.
They're cool. It's slowed down. Lex does a lot of cool, like Jeff was saying, stuff with pedals, stuff that's all beyond my knowledge. But yeah, it's rad. I dig it.
Yeah, They're awesome. They're also like local here, and like I used to live with their guitar player, so they're just home. Yeah.
Cool.
Who else have you had on the podcast from the
Noisem? No, Noisem were on the podcast.
Yeah, Noisem on there
in the early days. Yeah, they're. I don't know if you ever met Lucas Lee. Lucas was their tour manager for a while. He was a good buddy of mine. He is a good buddy of mine.
Oh, nice.
But we haven't seen each other in a bit.
Yeah.
And so he introduced me to the Noisem guys, and they were on the podcast in the early years.
Sick.
Yeah, and actually, Ellis is also in a band called the Arson Project.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I've had Ellis on the podcast before to talk about the Arson Project and Birdflesh. And I think Ada might have popped on because I used to do, I'd go back to New York just to see friends, and then I'd see shows at St. Vitus.
Sick.
And so I was there when Birdflesh played, and I think Ada popped on to say some stuff. And
that's awesome.
He wanted everyone to know that someone from another band was retarded, and then he disappeared again.
That sounds like yeah, I love them. They're just great and hilarious.